right, everybody, welcome back to the Event About It after show, Dynamic Dialogues. I'm your host, Megan Martin, and I'm here with Julie Mullins, and we're going to get right into it. But a quick reminder for our listeners, Julie is the current Executive Director of Explore Whitefish and owner of Zeal Destination Consulting and former VP of Convention Sales at Choose Chicago, with many other sales roles prior to that across other destinations and global sales roles with IHG and Fairmont. So we kind of hint on this in the podcast a little bit, but you've moved recently, like within the last year or two, from a major tier 1 destination, Choose Chicago, where they had, I don't know the numbers, but probably a fair amount of leisure and group, but group definitely being a very major, I mean, we're talking multi-million dollar destination here when it comes to groups. And now in this very boutique niche market, heavily reliant on leisure. So how has that transition been for you, one? And where do you think the two approaches can learn from each other? Like maybe what could Choose Chicago learn from having a niche market?
In Chicago, the essentially the transient leisure to group was about a 60-40 mix, with 60% of the business in Chicago being meeting and group, at least while I was there. And that was prior to COVID, and I left in 2021.
That honestly surprises me a little bit.
That it's that heavy?
It's more evenly split than I thought. I thought it would be more group heavy. Like
Yeah.
I was expecting more like a 70-30 split.
Yeah, for some of the big box hotels, it's probably heavier in regards to group, but there are a lot of small transient leisure-based hotels. So it did sort of wash out into that, and there's visitation and travel is a big part of that.
There's probably also neighborhoods too. Like I think about Boys Town and the ballpark area. Like that's definitely more sports leisure than it is group. So I
destination.
If you broke it down by neighborhood, it probably would look different.
Yeah. But here in Whitefish, we are 97% leisure. So people come to Whitefish to have a good time, to recreate outside, and to enjoy a small mountain town culture. And there is very, very little business travel. And
You're trying to change that, though?
I am working on that.
You guys just put out your first meetings guide.
Meeting and events
so
guide.
Excited about it.
We haven't officially launched anything big because we're still just trying to build the resources and collect some of the businesses in town to build a guide that can really be helpful. But we're getting there. We're definitely getting there. But really, truly, outside of a couple hotels, the idea of events are destination weddings or they're, family events. So the idea around business meetings or retreats or even incentive travel has not been something that I've seen as a forefront or even a market that they know that they can develop.
So do you think that's unique to our valley? I mean, I know there's other groups that have gone to Missoula for incentives. We talked about Bravo on the podcast. I know Bravo did, one of the Housewives franchise did a whole thing in a ranch outside of Missoula. So do you think that's unique to Whitefish or across Montana?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I've not thought about throughout all of Montana. I think that Montana is such an amazing outdoor recreation space that they've been able to generate an economy based in outdoor recreation, and anything that would be based in meetings or business events would be a secondary market. And it would be just as the various communities grow. Like when I think of Bozeman and I think of Missoula, those communities have grown to a point now where there truly is quite a bit of business infrastructure. And even here where we're sitting in Kalispell, business has grown where people are doing meetings, and there's a developing market in that space. And I just think it's a natural progression for Montana. It's a huge area where this state and various cities can grow the Sunday, Wednesday, the Sunday, Thursday, and keep the recreation, at least in the softer seasons, the shoulder seasons.
Leisure is going to be huge.
Leisure could be huge. It could be huge. And as airports like our airport here, GPIA.
It's almost too nice. I have to be
so
honest. It's
beautiful.
so nice and beautiful, but I almost miss the grungy little restaurant. Not gonna lie.
You like a little dirtbag.
I also love that the only escalator in the county is at the airport. It's my favorite fun fact about where we live.
I agree. But as our airports start to create more lift, it's going to be more accessible for executive retreats and the right size business meetings to come from direct flight markets like Seattle or LA or Chicago for that matter. There's Denver. There's a lot of, so I can see where that's going to be something that's going to grow because the communities are building the hotels, they're building they're building the special event venues, and they're starting to think about, in addition to just doing group tours to Glacier National Park, maybe we should do some group tours around wellness or group tours around
it's the whole sauna. I mean, there's
holistic,
like all these saunas
whatever
and all the things.
Yeah. So it's an area of growth, and I see that actually has the potential to really grow. And I know we've talked a lot about that.
We have. What, hypothetically, let's say you went back to Chicago. Not gonna happen. We know it's not gonna happen. We'll put it out there. Julie's not going back to Chicago. I'm not gonna let it happen.
I love Chicago, but home is down Montana.
Yeah, she's not coming back to Chicago. But let's say, hypothetically, you were gonna go back to Chicago. What's something you would take with you from your learnings in Whitefish? Like boutique experiences, the thing that I love most about here, you can get so personalized because it is such a niche market. What something like that would you take to Chicago that maybe they could adapt some of that personalization?
There's an authenticity and there's a uniqueness and a realness that comes in a community like Whitefish that has held on so tightly to who they are. This community was built because of the Great Northern Railroad. And it was built with people coming to explore Glacier National Park and coming to log and, different things.
It's called Stumptown for a reason.
It's called Stumptown for a reason. And there's a tremendous amount of awareness from the residents and even, our city council around, we can't lose our culture. We can't lose sight of that we are a community of people that are outdoor enthusiasts, a very close-knit, take care of your neighbor kind of culture. And they put a priority over that culture, over profit. And they've created certain zoning requirements and rules and regs around. Sure, our Central Avenue has become more tourism focused now, but they still require those businesses to be locally owned. And you don't see North Face, you don't see Helly Hansen, you don't see Lululemon, like you don't see those franchise type retailers on our Central Avenue because they want it to be locally owned people serving not only visitors that come, but also the local community. And if I were to take something back to Chicago, they do, Chicago is very neighborhood specific and there's different cultures within the neighborhood. But I would say we really have to take pride in what that culture is. And we can't diminish it because we want to make a lot of money.
I love that. And there's, for those that ever come here to visit where we live, there's an area in between Kalispell and Whitefish that I call the complex.
Yep.
Which is where all the chains are, all the chain restaurants, the chain stores, they're all situated in one area, which I love because then it allows each of our little towns in this valley to have a real identity.
Correct. Yeah.
Whitefish has their town.
Yeah.
All those little mom and pop shops. Kalispell has it. Columbia Falls, Big Fort. Yeah. Like they all get to keep their identity because Main Street is not the flashy lights. Right. It's not Michigan Mile.
Right. I agree. It's really, that authenticity is extremely important.
And I think not that Chicago doesn't have a culture or an identity, but it's so when you, I think, move from a market like that to something like here, it's so different and appreciated. And it's a different kind of culture and identity.
Yeah. And speaking on behalf of the community I'm now a part of, we fight like hell to keep it that way. And it's not easy because like so many other mountain towns, there is a lot of outside investment that wants to come in. And it's really, really hard to keep it just small enough in order to stay real.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, there's something to love and respect about it. And I think a lot of times, translating that into the events world, and people want to grow their business with events. And I talk a lot about event-led growth and how do you, culture and identity over profit. And how do you do that when you grow your business and leverage these events like HubSpot inbound, for example, how do they keep inbound that marketer focus and all the love, keep that people love the creativity that comes out of that. How does HubSpot leverage that and keep it what it is and the little, convention it started as to like this massive citywide, how do they keep that identity while still making money?
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's very
really,
hard.
really hard.
Yeah.
You got to stay true to your mission. You got to stay true to your purpose. Yeah.
And sometimes you have to put culture and vision
and
over
you do,
profit.
and you really do have to make decisions that maybe you're not going to make as much money, but you're maintaining that integrity.
And I think
and you're delivering that trust back to your community or to your customers.
It's the perfect segue into sort of the peaks and valleys of the sales process, because I think a lot of the times we think so like, I got to get the sale done. And we're going to talk about your post that you made about your history in there. But one of the things you wrote in there is there's no such thing as a one-time deal.
Yeah.
And in the events world, it's a long game. And although maybe you're not my boss today or you're not my customer today, things are always changing. It's a very small, very incestuous industry. We all move jobs and move around a lot. And we play a long game. Mm-hmm. Like I've always thought of when I was in sales, solutioning over selling and what that looks like, and playing the long game over just getting the sale and winning it there. But that takes a mental toll, right? There are some very high peaks and some very high valleys. Having 30 plus years on the sales side of the industry, like how do you mentally navigate the super highs? You're on the top of the mountain, you just closed the biggest deal of your life to, oh my God, we're not even going to hit a minimum of the quarter.
Yeah. I was mentored by boomers. So I'm cut from a very different cloth than a lot of the younger salespeople that are starting in this industry. And even my son just graduated from college and he's working in AI sales now. And I hear some of his, frustrations and different things. And in sales, you are as good as your last sale. You start over every single day. And you cannot expect, because you had $100 million deal close last year, or you might have won, top seller for your hotel company last year, that it's going to matter this year. And so you have to be of a mindset that you just keep going.
There are no peaks and valleys.
There are no, you just keep going, and you can't look backwards. You always have to look forward. And when I think about that there's no such thing as a one-time deal, it really is about understanding the needs of your customer and understanding not just the RFP and looking at it in a transactional way, but understanding what is your customer trying to accomplish with this event. And then figuring out from the destination that you represent or the hotel you represent or the product that you represent, how am I going to help not only this meeting actualize, but help them reach their goal? And if you become a true partner and you become kind of the part of the fabric and the DNA of their success, that partnership will continue to grow year over year over year. And it might not be the same meeting, but they will come back to you. And you also, it's an investment. I always look at, especially in convention sales, this customer, this association, this corporate meeting, whatever it is that you're doing, is investing their entire, like a huge part of their operating revenue in your destination or within your hotel.
There's so much trust that goes into it.
You better believe you have to be credible and trustworthy, and you don't deal with this as just another deal, that this is actually a business investment that could last for decades. So that's kind of how I was trained,
No, I love that. And I think there was a sales role I had that I really struggled in because it was like, get to the demo. And I was like, but we don't even know what they're trying to do. Like, I got the meeting. Like, I've always took the consultative sales approach, the solutioning, not selling approach to it. And, you know, I didn't really succeed in that role because they wouldn't let me sell what I felt was appropriate for the product that we were offering.
Yeah, we, as an industry, as a hospitality community, we can't allow ourselves to get so transactional. And I know we all have quotas and we all have goals and all of that stuff, but you can't get so transactional that you lose sight of the purpose why the person's sending you that RFP or why you solicited them to get the RFP.
Yeah, we're going to talk in a couple guests coming up on the podcast a lot about the human side of things, because I think as we get more and more deep with technology and AI, we're going to start losing the human side of why we do stuff. And we have a guest coming up, but just spoiler alert. She has a book coming out on the human side of selling and the human side of AI and who's on the other end of that data point or that data analytics you're looking at. And I love that because we really, at the end of the day, are solving problems and we're partnering with each other for the greater good.
That's why you're good at what you do. You get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's why we, at the end of the day, it's why we all do things. It's why we start companies and build products and sure, we all want to make a lot of money and want to be the next Elon or Jeff Bezos or whoever your like visionary billionaire is. But really at the end of the day, why we do it is we're solving problems.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Switching gears to maybe not so positive topic here, but we have found ourselves in some very precarious times. Things are very uncertain this year. There's a lot of changes going on. You, across your career, have seen the dot-com bubble, 9/11, the Great Recession. I mean, some of modern times' hardest moments. How did you persevere through some of that? And all of those drastically affects, really any economic uncertainty hits our industry.
Right.
I don't want to say more than anyone else because that's probably not true, but it's a lot. We're seeing our friends from Canada right now canceling meetings left and right, not coming to meetings, federal grants getting canceled. There's a lot of things going on. So not to get into the politics or anything of that, but just the mental fortitude you have to get through some of these, like, all right, we're going to have to grind right now. How do you do that?
It's twofold. So as a manager, going through some of that and having a team that was so full of fear because they weren't making their numbers, it's how do you keep your team engaged? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them inspired to continue to call even though nobody would call them back? Or for every negative comment, it reads, 25 other negative comments. For every positive comment, it disappears. So you really have to, as a manager, be aware of how your team is feeling and coach them in whatever manner reaches them to keep them motivated. As a manager that has a goal that has to be achieved with her team and maintaining that accountability, during a downturn, I remember, so many times, I sitting in Chicago in particular with, again, the Uber politics and, funding woes here and there. You think a city that, we would book 2.6 million room nights a year. We book, a tremendous, I think our goals, I was talking to somebody the other day and we were just talking about the billions of dollars of economic impact that we were responsible for within that center. You have to make sure that what you're doing is still providing a way of life for the cab drivers and for the wait staff and everybody else. So there's a tremendous weight that you carry and you might have less money. I remember at one point, it was Don Welsh. We had, an operating budget, I think at that point of like $35 million. And it was like literally cut to nickels. And he was like, Julie, you have to readjust your budget. And Mark Anderson was my VP at the time. He was like, we have to cut the budget. And I just remember looking at, some of the sales folks that I was leading at that point. I'm like, okay, you can't go to this show. You can't do this show. You can't take people to lunch. You can't take them to dinner. You have to see if somebody else can, pay for that, but yet you still got to close the deal.
Yeah. We're now chaining you to your dad's, but you have to.
And again, it comes down to the why.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we here? Why do we have these issues right now? And keeping your team optimistic and keeping them looking forward and not thinking, oh my God, like I didn't hit my numbers. I'm not going to make my bonus. I really needed that bonus in order to, buy this house I want to buy or whatever. It's just keeping focused forward and understanding this is why this is happening and this is where we have to go, and being innovative in how to get there. And I will tell you, when I was in Hawaii, again, a very short period of time that I was in Hawaii, I started in, I guess it was March of 2008, and in September 2008, the world fell apart. And I went from having a fairly
By the way, I graduated college that year and had to find a full-time job in the middle of the worst economic recession of our lifetime.
I was going through a divorce and I was raising 2 kids. Anyway,
it was a whole everybody.
It was a shit show. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say
All right, it was a shit show. But I remember sitting there as a salesperson with, life things going on and seeing my funnel that I had worked so hard to build literally disappear overnight. Like within a 48-hour period, every piece of business that I had built to a tentative and was hoping to close just disappeared because nobody would consider the additional costs and freight, shipping, and all that.
I mean, we
stuff.
didn't even talk about the pandemic. I didn't even add the pandemic to this. That's a whole talk about canceling overnight. I mean, it was, you see all that just disappear in a blink.
It was crazy. But at the end of the day, like Hawaii, it was about what do we have to do to keep the people that live in Hawaii and the people that work in the hospitality industry going, because they didn't have the same options as the mainlanders had. And that was my drive. I found a drive through looking at, wow, there's no one in those restaurants. Wow, there's no one staying in those hotels right now. We've got to figure out a way to get people here. And we started hunting like crazy.
So I don't know if you just realize that your full circle moment of coming to Whitefish and the ski bumps have to have something to do when it's not ski season. The restaurants and one of our favorite spots, Spotted Bear, they have to have butts and seats. They have to keep distilling, and your why is now very much translated to what you're doing here for Whitefish.
It is. Yeah. There's not when I look at Whitefish, here we are, a small mountain town, shadow of Glacier National Park, surrounded by unbelievably pristine, gorgeous wilderness. There's not a lot of business infrastructure. There's not a lot of manufacturing. There's not a lot of job opportunities for people that come in here, and hospitality is the primary driver. And I do feel a tremendous sense of responsibility that, yes, we do well in the summer. We do really well. And it's more about managing the traffic that we have and keeping a way of life for the community and the residents that we have in order to move people around. So it's not too congested and people can still find parking and still get into restaurants, that sort of thing.
I don't go to Whitefish in the summer.
I know.
But I'm a local, so I can say
that. But
that.
9 months out of the year, we really have to work at building experiences that people want to have when they, it's absolutely gorgeous right now out, but there's snow on Megan's deck outside.
Oh my God. Yo, it's snow. It's April. We're filming this in April. It won't be released till the summer, but it's snow today.
I'll be skiing this weekend.
I love it. No, I think why even in the uncertainty right now, it doesn't mentally affect me as much because I have my why and I know why I'm doing the job that I'm doing. And I know we got through 2008. We came out of the pandemic. I think we're still kind of coming out of the pandemic in some ways, but we persevered. We found a way. We knew we had to still get people together. Like I've never lost sight of the Northern Star of why we're doing stuff. So I think now it's like, okay, we're going to have to readjust. We're going to have to get inventive, but the world's not going to.
Right. But what you just hit on in that you got to keep your head down and do the job that's in front of you. And you can't get absorbed with all the extracurricular stuff that's going on in the world. Because yes, we're 50 miles from Canada and there's a very good chance the Canadians aren't going to come down this summer and spend their dollars. But again, we have to focus on how do we build the right kind of business then, or how do we build business that will come to Whitefish this year, even though, the political climate might not be one that we're going to see people from BC or from Vancouver coming down.
Yeah.
I
love that. That's great advice because this isn't going to be the last time something like this happens,
Right.
I mean,
it's not.
There's always going to be something. And so
I had to take a deep breath though, because it is a lot.
It is a lot. There's a lot going on. It's definitely something to, not make light of, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. So last thing, I want to read back some of the professional takeaways. You said your favorite professional takeaways in your anniversary year. So this is what you said. Selling starts at no. Anything before that's just order taking. There's no such thing as a one-time deal. Kind of talked about that. Empowering your team builds trust in future leaders. Talked about that too, especially in these uncertain times. I think leaning on your team and each other is probably the only way to get through it.
Yeah.
I think we saw that a lot during the pandemic. Listen deeply and often. Talked a lot about consultative selling, solutioning. Celebrate progress, not just the win. Oh my gosh, huge one I think we get lost in. Invest in your own professional growth. Trust your team. Share the why. When people understand the bigger picture, they feel more connected and inspired to get it right and learn something new every day. Those are a lot of amazing takeaways. We've talked about most of them. Is there one that is still resonating with you deeply now? Like that, if you think about the work you're doing right now, that you're like, man, that's great advice. I still take it every day.
Even in a small town like Whitefish, where again, I went from a $7 billion, travel.
Make sure everyone heard that billion.
$7 billion is what we had to generate at Choose Chicago on an annual basis. And now I'm working in a $200 million economy, and so it's dramatically different. But even in that regard, we get so busy. We get so busy with the details and the minutia and what we do that sometimes it's very easy to think, I'll just do it myself because I'll get it done faster. Even as an entry-level salesperson, or business development person, you're not doing right by yourself if you're not investing in the people and the team around you. And I've often looked at hospitality as a team sport. Not one person is going to make it great.
I mean, from any side, like to put on a convention from your standpoint, it takes the unions, it takes the center, it takes the food and beverage and the taxi drivers. From the corporate side, I need sales, I need marketing, right. I need my event agencies. Like it takes a village.
It takes a village. And every single person on that team has a responsibility. And even if you're the executive director, what I do is no more relevant than what my social media manager is doing and putting out a Desperate Housewives, post on April Fool's Day. Like it is, we're all in this together and we have to work together. And so when I listen to that, I think it really is about trusting the people that you work with, and it's mentoring and it's being a part of a team and a community. And if you do that, you'll always have a great experience through the journey, and hopefully you'll get the win. It's part of it.
No,
and we're blessed to be able to do this. Well, I feel so lucky that again, this industry is found.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a great place to kind of close out our after show today. And something super inspiring that I want to close out. And Julie wrote in this post, and we'll link to it so you guys can all read it too. It says, in hospitality, we connect, we encourage, we create moments that inspire people to learn, explore, and come together. We build memories that for many become their most treasured times with those they love. And I think it's such inspiring because we remember experiences, and I think the generation coming up is putting value on that.
I hope
and so. That's what we do, right? We're experienced curators, whether from a business, a leisure, whatever it is, we create the environment for people to have those memories that drive a sale or grow the business. But at the end of the day, they remember the brand that created something memorable for them. And I just love that. And I think it's a great place to end the after show.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us in the studio, and cheers to Julie and cheers to you guys. And we'll see you next time.
Come to Montana.
But go home.